Happy Monday, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of La Vida Baseball Live. I'm Julie Alexandria here in San Diego with Ozzie Guillen Jr. in Chicago and Jennifer Mercedes in New Jersey. Happy Monday, guys. We're in the middle of December. We made it.
Can you believe it? I mean, it's almost over. 2020 is almost over, unless like Groundhog Day happens on the 31st and we just go back into the same year.
Ozzie, are you ready to turn the calendar on 2020? Are we done with this yet?
I don't think we're done with it. I think that everyone thinks that 2021 is going to come in and then everybody gets to run outside and, you know, it's going to take some time. But I think that I think the future is brighter than the past. You know, I think that I see it as the positive. I think that the league itself, for example, baseball wise, the way that the game is covered, I think it will no longer be the same. I think a lot of things have sped up the process on how to cover something in a different way. So I'm more of the optimistic person. I think change is coming, but a positive change from this, a lot of all this negativity.
Yeah, well, that's a great jumping off point to dive into everything that we are going to discuss today, starting with the fact, and Ozzie, you hit the nail on the head when it comes to change and a certain heightened level of awareness when it comes to this past year and everything that's transpired. And there is nothing more that reflects that than the announcement that hit the internet and the report late last night that the baseball team in Cleveland, after 105 years, has announced that it is dropping their nickname of the Indians and that they will not move forward with a new team name just yet. Perhaps they will still use this name moving forward into the 2021 season, but a change is imminent. And of course, this started a whole wave of response and opinions on social media and Twitter. So, Jen, when you first read this, I know we're in a text chain here, and I was personally shocked. I didn't even get to write back. I was cooking when this news broke. But what was your first reaction to this team dropping the name?
Finally, I mean, I think it was just a matter of time. We were all just waiting. I mean, there was a lot of speculation if it was going to happen or not. And finally, I mean, it wasn't even a surprise to me. I think it was just, wow, okay, they did it.
Yeah. I mean, Ozzie, this decision comes as a wider push for sports teams to stop using Native American names and imagery as team mascots. Of course, they, a few years ago, did away with the Chief Wahoo mascot and effigy sort of, figure. What in your mind are they trying to accomplish here? And what do you think of the pushback? Because some people are saying, oh, you're too sensitive.
I think that it's very in-depth. Okay. It's not one answer fixes everything, because I think you just described it perfectly when you're talking about Native American Indian names, because the first thing that people started coming out was, okay, are the Quakers and the Irish are the next teams to lose their names? Okay. Mm-hmm. I think from the Indian standpoint, this is not something that's been happening of a recent. I think that Cleveland Indians, since as early as 1960s, 1970s, there was protests about changing the name of the team. I think for everybody in baseball who believes rumors, this is what Rob Manfred traded for the All-Star game in 2019. Was you guys change the name, you guys get the All-Star game. I think that for fans, if you want to keep rocking them and calling them Indians, that's your prerogative. That's, you can go buy gear. I think that's a whole new market that's going to be created. But from a team standpoint, if the owner wants to change the name of the team, if he believes that, in today's age, he doesn't want to represent that, that's fine. And I think that we need to respect that. I think that as much as we need to respect the Indians changing their name, we need to respect, because now the pressure's on the Braves. The pressure it looks towards to other teams of, when are you going to do it? They need to decide that. Okay. They need to decide that. And for everyone who's wondering what the name's going to be, it's going to be the Cleveland baseball team.
Baseball team.
Honestly, for next year.
It doesn't even, who cares, right? Like, they have Cleveland on their jersey, Cleveland. Like,
I think when they went away, I think that to me, it wasn't a big deal in the shock, because when they went away with Chief Wahoo, which was the logo that I thought was a super cool logo. I think that was the biggest shock when they went away with that, because that was, that was their logo, that was their symbol. And I think Jim Thome was, who didn't get a lot of news because, again, it wasn't 2020. He refused to go in with the Chief Wahoo hat into the Hall of Fame. Jim Thome has the C block. And it was something that him and his wife decided. And I think that quietly started opening up the eyes of the Cleveland organization to like, maybe we need to start moving towards a different logo, a different name. We want to be known as something different. So you know what? They didn't win a World Series in 75 years with the Indians as a nickname. Maybe this new nickname brings them better luck. I thought that a really cool name, again, I don't know if it's offensive or not. I really thought that they would go with Tribe, the Cleveland Tribe. Keep their logo. Again, that's one that's up in the air, but a lot of cool names have surfaced.
The Braves kind of use that in there.
Yeah.
I think it's also super cool though, because it opens up for, I love when teams change logos because it means money. It means merchandise.
I think that you can still honor, right, the Native American tribes that exist in that area. Because I think there's a lot of people like, oh, we're just honoring the tribes and the nations that exist. But no, I mean, the term Indians came because, right, I mean, we all know the history, right? Christopher Columbus thought he was in India, and so they called them Indians. The only people who are Indians are people from India, the country, right? And then here, the Native Americans prefer to be called by the nation that they belong to. It's not that difficult to understand. It really isn't. I am an American, but my family's from the Dominican Republic, so I am Dominican American. And that's just the way it is, right? I think people need to stop getting in their feelings about things that don't even concern them. You're still going to root for the Cleveland team. And it doesn't even matter, right? Like,
they're still not going to sign Lindor.
It bothers me when people get all in their feelings about, oh my God, the history is going to be erased. What history? What history? The only history that's going to be erased is the people who've been offended by this for such a long time. Like the history of the baseball team. How does that become erased because you change a name? People change their names all the time. Doesn't mean that they lost who they were 10 years ago. People need to stop being in their feelings about it. It doesn't affect you. People who were offended by it, they're happy now. Move on. Like, just forget. If it bothers you so much, then yeah, like Ozzy said, go buy a Cleveland Indians shirt, wear it to the game. Yeah. If you want to be that jerk who does that, do it. Like, I
think the owner. I hope that the owner comes out, okay, because everyone wants the Indian, somebody to speak out for them, because they're like the least. I think that's the least group of people that are like even bringing it up, and it's a bunch of people that are like going back and forth who have nothing to do with it on either side. I really hope that the owner comes out and says, I changed the name. For whatever reason you want to think I changed the name, I changed the name because I'm the owner of this team, and I can call this team whatever I want, and just end it there. Because they're trying to talk about like, oh, well, the support, and are the natives still going to get the support? And there's native groups that say, well, we like the name. And the owner needs to come and say, you know what? I didn't like the name. I found it that it was outdated. I want a different nickname. I didn't want to be known as, and then we can move on.
That came with it than positive at the end of the day. And you
want for him as an owner, I'll be honest. For him as an owner, I'll be honest with you. If I was an owner, okay, and I had people protesting, people just bothering me, even if I didn't think it was a big deal, like me personally, yeah, I would say, what's the best thing I have to do for my team and my company? Okay, I would say, you know what? Let's change the name. How much money can we make? How much money can we make by changing the logo and the name? And somebody gave them a figure and said, okay, we'll move forward. We'll change the name. So I think that we make it such a big deal because those changes don't happen in our lifetime. But teams change cities, teams change colors, teams change logos, teams change mascots. Sometimes they do it because they don't have any money, so they need to stir something up. But for the Indians, they're going to be known as the Cleveland something else. And we'll sometimes make mistakes when we're on the air, but we knew that was going to happen. And you know what? They picked the perfect year to do it. And now they can have an open contest to what the names will be. I've seen a bunch of really funny ones. I've seen a bunch of really good ones. But it is what it is. It's the game that we play in today. And, people voice it. And again, in 20 years, we might find a different name that people find, offensive, or that they don't want to be known as that. And that's the name of the game. So the fans have the right at the end of the day.
Right. And at the end of the day, it's that, people hate change. That's human nature. Nobody likes change. Anytime a new, interface software update, you hear how many people complain about it and they're like, I hate this new update. It's like, no, you just don't like change. That's human nature. So of course there's going to be detractors, and I am no way or shape or form comparing a name change of a baseball team to a software update, but in its most quantitative form, people hate change, to prove my point. Okay. Speaking of change, Steve Cohen keeps on cleaning house and installing some new names in Queens. Now the Mets have their 14th GM in franchise history. Jared Porter has been named general manager of the Mets. Congratulations to Jared Porter, who is a long-time tenured MLB executive. He has World Series pedigree, having won with both Chicago and the Red Sox. So congratulations to Jared Porter. I think in the grand scheme of things, this all points in an upward direction. Personally, I didn't have a problem with Brody, but I think it is important. And I think Steve Cohen is doing due diligence when it comes to bringing in some fresh blood in Queens.
Yeah, I think from what I've read, everybody says it's a good move. So let's trust that it's going to be a good move. I do want to see, though, the next couple of hires that, we were told that there's going to be diversity at executive levels. I want to see that diversity higher now. That's what I want to see. Words, you can say all you want, but we need to see you put that in action. So we're looking closely at you, New York Mets.
Time is ticking. Hot seat. Manager, Rojas Alu, your time is ticking, my friend. You better get going right off the bat in spring training, buddy. That's
what do you
all
mean? You're saying come out, make a splash, win early, win often?
He's got to win early and he's got to win often. Yeah. There's nothing worse for a manager that a new general manager comes in, because that's not your guy. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. It's not the guy you brought in. It's not the guy that you might see the franchise moving forward and growing. Does that mean that he will get fired tomorrow? No, but there is, if it doesn't work out, you can always go and say, well, that's not my guy. I inherited him. And that's always like a lifeline for a general manager on bad decisions that they make, even though that the manager might not be the scapegoat on that sense. But so for him, I think there's a lot of pressure. We've seen some moves in the coaching staff, but there's a new sheriff in town. The Mets had been known for recycling people in the front office, moving them from positions, but keeping around the same usual suspects on decision making. And, that's okay that they wanted to run with that. Mr. Cohen wanted a fresh team with a fresh look, and he's making moves in the executive level. And it's going to be their team for the next couple of years. And this new group is going to come in and make changes that might affect a little bit of the old Mets way. But if they win, it won't matter. If they don't win, okay, because now here comes the big issue is Mr. Cohen has the money, and there's nothing more dangerous for a team than having a lot of money with new management, because you might spend it the wrong way. So they made the James McCann move, which is the first move out of probably a couple of moves they're going to make, but new sheriffs in town and a lot of changes for the Mets.
Mm-hmm. All right. Speaking of changes, let's pivot here. Let's talk about the MLBPA and Rob Manfred's MLB. Both sides had a very open, very public dispute. And thanks to social media, we were privy to all of the ugly underlinings and the back and forth when it came to the start of the 2020 season. So now there's a new CBA on the table when it comes to 2021. And one thing is very clear, that both sides do not trust each other. In my opinion, it's nothing personal, Michael. It's business, to quote The Godfather. But certain people have very strong opinions on this. Can we move forward? I guess the big question is here, guys. Can we move forward with a baseball season in 2021, given everything that is happening, including the CBA deal being up and on the table for renewal and dispute? Can we move forward with both sides being so diametrically opposed?
I think that you can move forward, but I think that not only is there lack of trust between MLB and the union, I think that there's lack of trust between the players, MLB, and the union. For a long time, I've heard from players, you know what? It feels like the union sometimes works for the league and not for the players. So this lack of trust has been happening for a very long time. We just got to see a lot of that play out publicly because of social media, because of 2020, because we all had nothing better to do than to sit there and eat up all of the gossip, right? So I think that they can move forward, but I think that first, the union needs to deal with their relationship with the players. I think that's the first thing that they need to do, because if they want to move forward with the collective bargaining agreement, they all need to be on the same page. So they really need to work on that trust between their players, and then you can move forward with negotiating between MLB.
Ozzy, in your opinion, I'm interested to know what your dad has to say about this as well. Have you spoken to him about this?
You know what? I've learned so much in the past year about my father and what the union was like. And I'm very proud because it's something that he never talked about. And there's a lot of men and some women that were involved in those, very crazy times where you knew that you might go into a strike 2 years away from the strike. Okay. That's very hard to think about. We might, from the union telling them, guys, save money. Okay. Because this is what the future looks like. Don't go make any crazy purchases. From them having conference calls where it was one phone for the country that you were in, and guys would go all meet in one room. And Tony Bernasard at the time, who was a very well-respected individual, former player, would say this is what's going to happen, and would tell players, don't you dare go outside of the union and try to say something in the newspaper. Or so it was very sealed. But he keeps bringing that word trust. Okay, he trusted Tony. Everybody trusted Tony. He was a player rep. They knew that there was no back and forth between the union and the league. They knew whatever the union said, that's what was happening. The players knew that they had their backs. They knew that none of the players were going to go in under the table and make a deal. Okay. He says that's what worries him now, that because the players don't trust the union, some of the players are running their own little factions and saying, well, I can do a better job. Let me figure it out and let me call out the league. He says that's the worst thing that can happen to the union, because the league then takes advantage of you in the sense that you have no way to negotiate. He also says that you need to be realistic, okay? And for them, they had 4 or 5 things that they knew that they were not going to move forward without them, okay? For them, free agency and at the time, the salary cap was a big one. He says now the times are different. He's not a player, so he doesn't know what those things are, but that they need to lay those out and say, what are the things to Tony Clark that we're not going to give in? Okay. No matter what you do, no matter what you negotiate, we're not going to give in. For them also at the time was the drug testing, PEDs, and they wanted to come in, and players said, absolutely not. And there was things that you can negotiate. So the league, he believes that the league has things that they're not going to budge in. He knows that the league has, 3 or 4 demands from the owners that they're not going to give in. And then the players have that. And that's when you can negotiate past it. That's when a strike happens. But he says that he doesn't think that the players have that right now on their list. Okay. What do you want? Okay. Because, for example, they missed a huge opportunity in this past 2020 season when they were arguing pennies on the dollars. Okay. When they could have said, okay, if we play this year, for every player that plays at this moment, they get medical coverages for the rest of their lives because they were on a 2020 roster. Okay. That's something that you might not think you're benefiting from right now, but you're really helping out anybody that comes in later on. So if there's any dispute for the 2021 season, we really believe that they should look at little short wins instead of trying to win the bargaining for that season, because I'm already scared because they're saying that the vaccine's coming, but that you still need to social distance. Okay. Which is fine. But now there's rumors that are saying, well, owners won't start until there's fans in the stands. Well, what happened?
That's not going to happen because most of Americans.
Correct. I'm saying correct. Most Americans won't attend a stadium, and it goes. Then you go into a state. States like Texas might open up and have no issues with it. State where I live, like in Illinois, they're talking about maybe opening it up August. Okay, so I think that they need to say, okay, how do we fix this in the short term? Not dealing with the collective bargaining. So it's a tough thing. They got a ways to go, but I really think that there needs to be trust, like Jennifer said, between the union, Tony Clark, and the representatives and the players. Then they attack as a team the league.
Correct.
Because if there is no union and there's no players, there is no chance. And I'm really scared because Rod Manfred, okay, he's not your typical commissioner. Other commissioners come in, they don't want to rattle the cage. They just want to be able to, go in and make things cool. They might want to add a wild card per se and make little changes. Rod Manfred's not that guy. We've seen him want to change rules, implement changes. And that's scary to players because, I think that a lot of big changes could change the game in a big way, and it can affect their pockets in the future and then for the next generation. The part no one talks about is when you're going into a collective bargaining, and players need to realize this, it's not about you and your current contract and where you're currently at in your career. It's where you're at. And man, this is so weird. It's such a big fear because guys that have just retired, okay, Cesar Sabathia, being one of the main guys, Carlos Beltran for the Hispanic guys. There's a lot of guys that have just stepped out of their careers.
Right now,
such a big
Andrews, who is on the board, I believe.
Correct. So there's so many guys that have just stepped off that were very recently players that were such a big push for the union that I'm really scared that there's no face from the player side, other than Trevor Bauer was very vocal, that can tell the players, can say, hey guys, we're going to rally around and say, this is what we're doing. Okay.
I actually really appreciate Trevor Bauer.
I do too. I do too, but he's not, but it's hard because he's in a weird situation.
No, of course. And what I mean to say is, like, I wish that there was somebody on the Latino side who is just like Trevor Bauer as far as being very vocal, but studying what the CBA is all about, what it is that they all want. I want all of the Latino players to get together, do a Zoom meeting, start talking about what you guys want so that you can all be on the same page. Their voices together have so much more power collectively than one guy speaking for all of them. I think that and they need to realize that power. I think that this season, some of them started to realize that they do have more power than they think. We started to see a lot of those players being more vocal, but I think for 2021, for the CBA, for there to be that trust, first there needs to be trust collectively amongst all of those players. They need to discuss, how does this affect me? How is this going to affect this younger generation? Because I think that the veteran players need to look out for the younger players. If you want the game to continue to grow, they need to get together. So do the Zoom meeting. Whoever wants to, set that up, set it up.
No, I'm saying that we can logistically, all these players all talk to each other. But the thing is, and when we're going to talk about Latino players, they need to let the union know this is what we want from our players in Latin America. Mm-hmm. If you don't want the world draft, let them know that and say, we're not going to sign anything unless the world draft is not something that's going to happen, because we want to be able to stay free agents. As a collective, I really hope that when I look at Pedro, when I look at Big Papi, there's such big names in their countries where players listen to them. I really hope that the Lindors of the world, that they don't feel that they're too young to make that splash, which Trevor Bauer has done that. A lot of people look at Trevor like, what are you talking about, kid? But he's voicing it. It's in a hard situation because he doesn't have 20 years in the big leagues. Right. But I'm scared that since those guys are very limited now because the gap just recently happened, I hope that the middle ground player steps up and says, okay, Lindor's going to be the leader for Puerto Rico, okay? For the República Dominicana is going to be Castillo, or, for Venezuela is going to be Suarez or Miguel. And then you guys get together and say, okay, this is what we're thinking. These are the things that we want. And then go to your player rep from the Latino side and tell them this is what we want, and make those connections, because at the end of the day, that's how you're going to be heard, is in the collective as a group. And I really feel that those players should not be shy of stepping up and stepping in and saying, I want to be a leader for this, because again, I did not know that my father was a player rep. My dad was a player rep, meaning he would talk to the Latino players on his team in the Chicago White Sox. He would talk to the non-Latino player rep, but he was versed. Tony Bernard made sure that Ozzy knew what they were fighting for, okay, that the message was clear, and then Ozzy would have conversations with other player reps, other Latino players of the time, obviously, but they were all on the same page. They all knew, and to him, it's ironic because back then it was a phone. You had to make a phone call to like a home phone, okay? And the meetings was like at 6 p.m. on this date, the call needs to be made. He says now it's just so much easier with like the Zoom and, the WhatsApp groups and the Google. But he says that it's not for everyone, but he thinks that there's enough leadership amongst the Latino ranks that someone can step up and say, hey, I'll be the guy. I'll reach out to the union and say, I'm going to help this make happen.
And I think that you need to remember, the union works for them. They don't work for the union. Y'all got the control. Remember that.
Speaking, by the way, just to bring up a point, because Ozzy, you made me think of something right now. Speaking of moving everything digital and virtual and online and Zoom calls, what do you guys think about the future of winter meetings just being completely online and no more in person?
Nothing happened. Everybody was like so disappointed. Winter meetings wasn't even really winter meetings. Nothing really.
I think it's sneakier. I think it's sneakier now. I think moving forward in the future, my fear is that hopefully the media doesn't let it happen. I hope that we don't go away from that tradition, because I really think it's like the reunion of Major League Baseball, where everybody's in one place, from interns to high-level executives. And I really do feel that connections. Correct. And I really feel that connections are made and trades are made when you're sitting over coffee with someone, okay, or you hear rumors happening. I really think that being in one place gives you the energy to say, okay, I'm going to make something happen. Like I'm going to go and I'm going to pursue. And then a lot of negotiations that people don't know about. I really like that that kind of atmosphere. I really hope that teams trying to be so private say, oh, we love this whole Zoom thing. We can be, in our headquarters. We don't have to bother going anywhere. And I think that takes away from the excitement of what a winter meeting, because people don't know this. In a winter meeting, you have big league players in the lobby.
Yeah.
Any free agent, any free agent that there's rumors that he's unhealthy, drinking problem, not okay mentally, got fired the year before, any reason, they're in the lobby like, hey, I'm not crazy, I'm here.
Right.
I'll have a conversation with you, because it's a lot easier to say, okay, meet me at 2:00 in the lobby and I'll talk to you one-on-one and I'll find out what you're really about, than me go seek someone out, get them on a plane, fly them back to my city. So I think winter meetings is probably one of the best kept secrets in the game of baseball. And I think that the reason there was no moves, it was because everyone was just at home kind of doing their own thing, paperwork and paper pushing. And I really think that those moves that are created in winter meetings did not happen this year because of that.
I know. I hope we go back to the in-person, but of course, I mean, what an antithetical sort of idea when it comes to the age of COVID, right? Everybody in one place from all over the country descending upon one lobby in one hotel where everybody is staying. It's almost cringeworthy now, knowing what we know now at the end of 2020. Okay, let's move on to one of our last topics here. And this one's a big one. I hope we have time to get into it, because so many opinions when it comes to Curt Schilling and the Hall of Fame. What do we judge a player on when it comes to the Hall of Fame? Is it just the play on the field, or does it bleed into his personality, his moral code, and his actions off the field? Perhaps political opinion and how he conducts himself. These are ways in which we measure a player. But should it matter when it comes to the Hall of Fame? Is it just about the numbers that they're able to put up? Curt Schilling, arguably one of the best pitchers to ever play in the game, but when you think of all of his actions and his opinions and his stances, very conservative and sort of borderline nasty, how do we judge that? And will people vote for him this year as his name is on the ballot? Jen, what's your opinion on this?
So I think his political views don't matter. I think nobody's political views should be held against him when you're talking about the Hall of Fame. I think, though, your moral code does. And Curt Schilling in the past couple of years has shown us that he has no moral code. I think that, yes, there are players who have gotten into the Hall of Fame before and, another time where things were accepted. Racism was accepted. It was the norm. It wasn't what you fought against, right? Like, it's particularly in a sport like baseball. But now we know better, so we do better. And Curt Schilling does not deserve the honor of being honored in the Hall of Fame. He is not a nice human being. I'm sorry, he is not. If you go on Twitter, he is constantly being divisive. He is hateful. He is hurtful to a lot of people, but yet he thinks that he deserves a vote from a lot of those people. And that's what it talks about in this article. When you talk about deserving of being honored in something like the Hall of Fame, where you're going to be giving, all your flowers, right? And people are going to go and see your plaque. I'm sorry, but I don't think a lot of people are going to go and want to take a picture next to Curt Schilling's plaque. A lot of people who know what ethics and morals are, they're not going to want to, because he's offended a lot of people and he doesn't care. That's the thing. He doesn't care. He will double down on being divisive and on a critique. Like, he doesn't apologize for it. Okay.
But just to play devil's advocate with you, you say who would come, and I agree with you 100%, Jen. But when you pose the question, who would come to take a photo in the hall with his plaque, it is just 50% of the country agrees with his political stance.
But that's the thing. They can agree with his political stance, but I don't think that 50% of the country is as mean and divisive as he is. Like, there is a difference between agreeing politically, and then there's a difference between just being a nasty human being and wanting to call people names and just being a racist. All right. Like, I don't care who you played with. You could have played with a bunch of African-Americans and Latinos at the time that you played, but you could still be a racist. You could still date Black people and white people and Latinos, and you could still be a racist. So he's shown who he is. And I mean, you can disagree with me all you want, but he's shown who he is. He's shown us who he is. He's not a nice person. And I don't think that, and it's not that he's just not a nice person. He's a very divisive and hateful person. He incites hate, and a lot of the people who do follow him, they like that. And we are not at a time where we need to accept that anymore. I'm not going to accept that I need to honor you in that way. Yeah, you're a good pitcher, but I don't need to honor you just because you were a good pitcher. All of these other things matter to me now. And that's what's important.
Absolutely. Ozzy, I mean, he has made such outrageous claims and said so many hateful comments, of which that journalist should be lynched. And he's, had racial slurs. Where do you draw the line here?
I think it's hard because there's people that have been kept out of the Hall of Fame because of comments made like Curt Schilling. They just happen to be black. One of them just passed away right now. His name was Dick Allen. Dick Allen doesn't go into the Hall of Fame because he was very, very forward thinking and very in your face. But the media didn't like him. I'm saying the media didn't like him. I'm saying he was a black man. Okay. Roberto Clemente, we were obsessed with him. White media did not like Roberto Clemente. This myth that the white media love Roberto Clemente is BS. Roberto Clemente is in because he dies. The 3,000 people, oh my God, if Roberto Clemente doesn't die in that plane crash, there's people that would have not voted with him. So this goes back, now the color of the person's skin has changed because we're having the same issue if we kept guys like Dick Allen out, for example.
I'm gonna stop you just really quick because it's not the same thing. It's not comparable because these other people were fighting for what was right, for what was morally and ethically right. Curt Schilling is doing everything that these people were fighting for. So you can't compare. I understand exactly what you're saying, where people haven't been voted in because of their views and the way that they spoke, and they should be allowed in, right? But somebody who is against all the things that America is supposed to stand for, no. But continue.
So again, I think that when you're talking about the Hall of Fame, if it was the Hall of Fame of life, then he doesn't get in. I think that unfortunately it goes down to the voters to vote. I think that IBBW, whatever their name is, I think that their right should be revoked to be the only people that are allowed to vote. I think the voting system's outdated. I think that needs to be changed completely.
It's basically the Electoral College of baseball.
You can put it that way. It's just because your personal opinion does go into it, okay? And it starts becoming, it's not like a general voting. It literally comes down to your personal views on someone. Can you separate the game of baseball from personal views? Because I'll tell you this one, there's a lot of guys in that list that are in the Hall of Fame that I will put that are bigger racists, in my personal opinion, than Curt Schilling. That's what I'm saying, because I've known them personally.
Were they as vocal? And I think that's where we draw the line.
And that's what I'm saying.
You are welcome to have whatever opinions. Look, free thought, free mind, have your opinions. But doesn't mean you have to air them.
Correct. So that's what I mean. So if I had to vote on that, and that's why when I vote on the Hall of Fame, I try to keep, and again, the way that I view it is because some of these guys I know personally. I try to keep that personal thought out of it completely. For someone who's voting that's not doing that, they might say, okay, you're not worthy of it. I think the other part people don't understand, which is something that in Curt's case, it's very fair, okay? Curt's not a fit-in Hall of Famer right off the bat. He's not a guy that you walk in. He's not Barry Bonds, where you're like, well, he's the greatest player to ever play the game offensively. What's the argument, okay? Curt Schilling is a guy that's give or take. Is he a Hall of Famer? Is he not a Hall of Famer? So I think that at the end, when you have the balance and you say, is he a Hall of Famer or is he not a Hall of Famer? I think for him it's going to be harder because then you start throwing extra things in there, just like playoff appearances. You start throwing moral clauses. So I think that's where he gets hurt, is where you start having the balance and you say he's not that. If he was Barry Bonds 100% steroid free, Curt Schilling could be a member of the Ku Klux Klan. He'd get in. If he was Ty Cobb, Babe Ruth, he'd get in. Okay, but he's not those guys, so that affects him because I think that they take it into consideration more than others and say, you know what, you're not going to get in. You're a borderline guy and you weren't great. Opposite of if you were a borderline guy and you've been a great person, the people are obsessed with you. They love you. You're getting in. If he was Mariano Rivera, the greatest pitcher of all time in his position, he'd be getting in.
Very conservative thoughts.
Exactly.
He does, and that's what I mean. He would be getting in. Mariano Rivera can go in tomorrow and say anything that he wants. People in Panama don't like him 100%. Okay, he's got extremely conservative thoughts, extremely religious. Okay, he maybe doesn't do it on Twitter, but he's Mariano Rivera. Okay, you're gonna go the other way. Roberto Alomar spit in somebody's face. Okay, an umpire. Okay, Ty Cobb shot a man. Ty Cobb kicked out an African-American man from the stands. So you can go down the list. There's been pitchers that have been caught cheating on the mound. So
but that's what I'm saying. You move forward from you know better now. You do better now. And I can give you an example. For instance, okay, we talked about Mariano Rivera. I mean, he was a very outspoken supporter of this administration in this election year, right? But there's nobody who will say that he seems like a hateful person, right? You talk to Mariano, and he's one of the most peaceful people when you speak to him, right? That you will ever speak to. But then there's I'll give you R. Kelly, for instance. R. Kelly made really good music. When I listen, if there's an R. Kelly song playing on the radio, I skip it. I don't listen to it anymore. So you know more, you know better, so you do better now. And that's just the way I feel like 2021 and the rest of these years moving forward are going to be for a lot of people.
Players need to know that. Players need to know that now that the moral, it's out. Okay, it is a thing. So players need to be careful. I think just in general, the Hall of Fame, the fans give the value to it. Okay. Someone like myself, I think the Hall of Fame is an amazing place. It's getting to the point now that they're keeping a lot of guys out who were the best in their game. Okay. I wish I had the money. I'd go build a Hall of Fame for Barry, Roger. Okay. To make it called the real Hall of Fame. Let's keep it real. Again, I think that there's going to be a gap where you're going to start bringing guys back and saying, is this guy a Hall of Famer? Again, the Curt Schilling one is hard because it did get caught up in the political turmoil. Because again, Curt Schilling was not a fit in right away guy. Okay, I wanted Curt to get in because if Curt gets in, that means Luis Tian needs to get in. But if Kurt's not in, if Kurt's not in numbers wise, Luis Tian does not deserve to get in.
But no, it does. I mean, I know we're
numbers wise. I'm saying numbers wise. Just on the pure numbers.
Numbers
again.
Who you are. Both of them matter. I mean, there's a lot of people who make the argument, Manny Ramirez and Barry Bonds and Sammy Sosa and all of those guys. Well, if you're gonna make that argument about who they are, then they shouldn't get in either. But I don't think those two things are comparable, right? Like one of them is using a substance, and maybe they cheated, maybe they didn't. As far as Sammy Sosa is concerned, Mark McGwire is concerned, right? Like there's different levels of sin, right? There are different levels. There are misdemeanors and there are criminal offenses. And to me, Curt Schilling has committed criminal offenses when it comes to trying to get in to the Baseball Hall of Fame. And all of these other guys have committed misdemeanors. They've paid their dues by not being able to get in for so long. The Reds guy, oh my God, I forgot his name. Cincinnati Reds.
Pete Rose
has paid his dues.
Right.
To be in for
but this has changed the game, okay, for sure, because and I've said it, my family's talked about it. No one wants to be vocal. Everyone wants to be vocal on one side. No one's going to be vocal on the other side because they know. Trust me, they know. I've known guys that are in the Hall of Fame that are more open, there are bigger closets. It's how you like to know if you're prejudiced. If you want somebody to be a closet prejudiced person, or you want them to be a vocal person. Again, so everyone's gonna go back to being, the quiet guys, and if you play with them, you'll get their experience. Again, with Curt, it's a weird time for him. He's been extremely political on it. He makes money from it now. He's got a show. That's his way of life now. At the end of the day, does Curt need the Hall of Fame? No. Does the Hall of Fame need Curt? If I was Curt, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like A-Rod, I'll give you an example. Alex Rodriguez. Okay. I think he's one of the greatest players to ever play this game of baseball, even as a two-time cheater. Okay. I would not want to get inducted into Hall of Fame because if everyone that's sitting behind him thinks that he shouldn't be there. Mm-hmm. So if I'm Curt Schilling and I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame and everyone that I'm on the stage and I know everyone that's behind me thinks that I shouldn't be here, then I'm like, I don't want to be here. It's a members only group. So I think that you have to be in it completely. And that's why I think Curt has doubled down on what he's done. The difference with A-Rod is because Curt is like, to him, his views are more important than the Hall. And that's, I think, to some guys, it's going to be bigger than others when it comes to the debate.
Narcissists will always double down because they always think that they're right.
I'll give you my personal opinion. If I believed in something, to me, the Hall of Fame doesn't buy. When we talk about like people are like, oh, the Hall of Fame. I bet there's a lot of guys that are in the Hall of Fame that wish they were A-Rod. Okay, they get the money. They're with J-Lo. So the Hall of Fame, it's what you're okay with. If Kurt's okay with it personally, because I think if Kurt really wanted to get in, just spin it. Go out there, say, hey, the comments that I've made, you talk about other things that you've done, and you try to sell yourself to do that, and he hasn't. So again, I think at the end of the day, I think
he drank the Kool-Aid.
He drank it. He doubled down, and
you know how embarrassing it would be though for him to be up there, give a speech, and have the majority of the people turn their backs on him.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. 100. That part we agree on. That part we agree on. That's why I think the Hall of Fame, the people that are voting in are like, well, why even waste our time? Again, I think every voter, and this is a bigger story. I think this year there's been such a big fiasco in voting, like a huge fiasco. I love. There's been great guys that have voted, that have explained their voting process of why they voted for someone back then. Why not now? I'll give you my personal opinion. After this Houston scenario, okay, and AJ Hinch having a job, my ballot has all the steroid users. The only two guys that have an issue with are Manny and A-Rod, because they're double offenders. Cano now falls in that category, but Sammy's in my book. Barry's in my book. All those guys are in because I'm like, they haven't found anything, and yet you guys still want to punish them, but you guys let somebody that cheated for a World Series ring still play. None of the players got punished, just like Carlos Beltran. When his shot comes in, I'd vote for him right away. Maybe 20 years ago, I would have said, oh, we got to keep Carlos out. I'm like, why? He was part of something. So my mindset in the last 10 years on steroids has literally changed, because I think that we were all sitting on top of a hill and pointing fingers at these guys, and we shouldn't have been doing that. So I love when someone votes. And I'll be honest with you, I love when someone voted, the guy from Sabermetrics, the guy from Fangraphs, okay, who Kurt Schilling needs for this guy to say Kurt's a Hall of Famer, because Kurt's only a Hall of Famer is based on Sabermetrics numbers. You go old school numbers, he's not a Hall of Famer. And the Fangraphs, I think he's the editor, and the head editor said, I am not voting for Kurt Schilling because I think he's a bad human being.
Yep.
That I respect. I'd rather have somebody say that when they're voting than do the Juan Benet one and say, I'm only voting for Andy Pettitte and I think Scott Rowland because there's no other Hall of Fame worthy guys on the ballot. That to me is a clown move. I'd rather you tell me that you don't like Kirk and you're leaving him out because in your moral code, okay, because that's the part where I can't argue that, because to some people, for example, the steroid situation is a way bigger issue than something of a political view. To some other people, the way that you think and you act is not as a big issue. So I really think that when you do vote and you do have as a voter the right to have a moral code vote, meaning you can say, I don't want this person to get in because he's a bad human being. Just say it. Don't hide about it. Just say, I'm not voting for Kurt Schilling because he's a bad human being. That I respect that. And if more than 50% of it vote and say that, then Kirk has to live with it because he knew getting into this what the criteria was.
Yeah, it's true. I think every player and every person for that matter needs to think before they tweet and say, is it really worth it? All right, we are out of time. Thank you so much for joining us, and leave in the comments your opinion on Kurt Schilling, on the new Mets GM, on whether or not the Players Association and MLB can come to an agreement, and what you think the new baseball team in Cleveland's name should be. Let us know on all the topics. Sound off. You can always find us at La Vida Baseball on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. We look forward to hearing from you. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining us.